Good evening. Welcome to the special Ogden City Council meeting for May 8th, 2012. Let the roll call reflect that all council members are present. And first on the agenda is approval of minutes. And the first is the minutes of the regular meeting held February 28th, 2012. Councilmember Wicks.
Thank you, Chair Garner. I've reviewed those minutes and find them to be correct.
And minutes of the study session held April 17th, 2012. Councilmember Van Hoosier.
Chair Garner, these minutes are correct to the best of my recollection, and I move that we accept the minutes for February 28th, 2012 and April 17th, 2012.
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Van Hoosier and a second from Vice Chair Blair to accept these minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, these minutes are accepted. Next on the agenda is an item of common consent. This is the budget opening for the airport terminal expansion and to set the public hearing for May 22nd, 2012. Motion?
So moved.
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gochner and a second from Councilmember Van Hoosier to set the public hearing for May 22nd, 2012 for the budget opening. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next is reports from the Planning Commission, and I think Mr. Montgomery will be presenting tonight.
Mr. Chair, members of the Council, the Planning Commission back in March received a petition considering revision to the Ogden City Industrial Park Zone. And then in that petition, it requested that provisions be made to allow used car sales on property on 2550 South. As the Planning Commission reviewed this request, they first talked about the intent of the OCIP zone and different items that had taken place since that zone was created. If you recall, when the city developed the industrial park zone back in the late 70s and early 80s, that had restrictive covenants to them. And as time went on and the properties were sold, a question came up about having the zoning reflect those restrictive covenants, so that OCIP zone was created. Later on, as those covenants were put into the ordinance, questions came up that the use is mainly manufacturing, but for properties that are along 1900 West or 2550 where there's a lot of traffic, and the traffic had definitely increased from the time the park was made 30 or 40 years ago, that retail should also be an option along those two streets because they are not just industrial streets, they are through traffic streets for the general public. And so the ordinance was amended back a few years ago to allow retail along those two streets, 1900 West and 2550. But certain uses were prohibited, which included car sales, tire sales, things which were required outdoor display, which led now to this petition. Mr. Balmer, who owns the building, which is one of the Stratford homes, has been running a internet dealership from that location. And as long as everything was inside and it was literally considered an office, that was permitted. However, he has come to a time where he feels that to help along the way, he needs to have some outdoor display of vehicles, which is why the petition was made. As the Planning Commission looked at this, there was some discussion back and forth about the appropriate use of industrial land, what limits on retail should exist along 2550 and 1900. And the discussion came in that what we didn't want to have happen is taking industrial land where there is job creations for multiple jobs and have it become a large car lot. But at the same time, realizing the situation that Mr. Balmer was in, that some display would probably be beneficial because other uses do have exterior displays, even though they're products they assemble, such as you had Wells Cargo with all their trailers and different types of things that had outdoor displays taking place of product. that it could be reasonable to look at this so long as it limits it to type of small-scale uses and that there's multiple uses taking place on a lot. That way you do have the intent of the OCIP zone still kept intact. And so in the recommendation from the Planning Commission to you, they're recommending approval of the ordinance, allowing used car sales with 3 conditions: that the display area not cover more than 2,500 feet or 15% of the lot, whichever is less. And just for reference, 2,500 square feet is generally somewhere around 6, 7, 8 car display area. That's about as much as you can get in 2,500 square feet, and be able to move the car in and out. If you took strictly and put bumper to bumper, side to side, and not allow any movement, you could get a maximum of 12 cars. But generally, that's the range you're at with 2,500 square feet. And also that the ordinance, as it says, you have to maintain the ordinance, and there's a front yard setback, and any display has to be behind the front yard landscape setback. And that there also be another main use on the property, so that there are multiple uses taking place, so there is opportunity for job creation and other activity going on. And so those conditions are what the Planning Commission are recommending to you as far as conditions of approval of the revision to the ordinance to allow used car sales to take place. Do you have any questions of me?
Just one question. So in relationship to this petitioner, the main use then is internet sales?
That is the office he has now. The other thing he has going on the property is coin sales.
Coin or gold? Coin?
My understanding was coin. Gold included with that, but that's
So he has 2 in the building, and then he has his parking lot in the front for his cars, right?
Well, he would if the ordinance is passed.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you review, Greg, the dialogue that the Planning Commission had? I know the vote went 6-2, plus the dialogue that the staff had, because they recommended denial of this, which was different than what the Planning Commission went.
Well, in the actual language of the petition itself for the used car lot, the staff's denial recommendation was based on, we didn't see as a single-use used car lot being what we should do with industrial land, even though we had said 2,550 or 1,900 can be retail. You don't want to open up to 5 acres of industrial land all of a sudden becoming just car sales, because then where do we again have the industrial jobs creation take place from? There are other retail areas where that could take place from. So that is how the original petition was worded. But as the discussion went on with the Planning Commission, it was scaling that down to allow the multiple uses. Then there would be an opportunity or a window that this type of activity could take place on a small scale.
So is that your effort to, or the Planning Commission's effort to keep from opening Pandora's box with respects to that zone?
Correct.
Maybe another question. There are some businesses along 2550. You mentioned Wells Fargo, and then there's Avco that people go in and buy things, but they are generally assembled there. Is that the primary distinction of what does qualify for the zone and what doesn't?
Correct. That manufacturing then allows that outdoor display, where this is strictly a retail scenario. That is why this revision is necessary.
Okay.
So does this petition actually open up the whole M2 zone for potential used car lots then?
No, it only does it on 1900 and 2550. Those are the only 2 locations that this would open up to.
But those are the major roads in that area,
Correct.
which are pretty long.
Yeah.
And for clarification, only 15% of their square footage can be used car sales.
Or 2,500 square feet, whichever is less.
Right, and they must have 2 other types of use for that.
Another main use in addition to that use, yes.
Now, are used car sales permitted in an M2 zone?
No. Let me go back quickly before let me look before I said that. I jumped too soon. Because I do know that the rebuildable car sales, that was the only place we allowed them was in the manufacturing, where someone had a junker and then wanted to display it and sell it to fix it up. We did say that could only happen in the M2, so I got to go back and say certain types of used cars, that's the only place we would allow them to take place. And that was back several years ago when we looked at junkyards and other type of things that were taking place.
Pictures in the property, the house looks really nice, but in front of where they're parking the cars, it looks pretty ratty. And I'm just asking the question, are they going to be expected to have a berm and, plantings or whatever to dress that up like we've required of other businesses?
Well, they would need a landscape setback in front of the display area. Yes.
They are aware of that.
That's what the ordinance requirement would be.
Further questions?
Have you ever had any other requests for this kind of a change in zoning for just one business? I mean,
We always get those type of requests.
I'm saying for a used car lot. I mean, for something like, a business like a used car lot or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be dealing, a couple of weeks, we're going to be dealing with another special request of change of an ordinance for a special use, and then it becomes broad. And so it's not unusual. I mean, even what I mentioned about the rebuildable car lot, that was, again, those type of things of where's the appropriate location, because someone wanted to do it at this location, and so we look at the ordinance change and consider, is that appropriate given all the other things we're trying to accomplish in those areas. And I think with this one, the why that we feel okay about this is we mentioned that 2550 and 1900 really have a commercial aspect to them because the traffic volumes are not a typical industrial area. And so we opened up that concept of general retail happening on these streets also. And so this, we allow used cars on Washington Boulevard, a C3 zone, with its heavy traffic. And so, again, this is not inconsistent with that concept.
But the commercial activity is different along 2550 than used cars. The commercial climate is different than that.
Well, at the present point, I just think 1900 West, I think you're going to, as time goes on, there will again be more and more commercial activities really happen on 1900 West as people look at reusing those spaces.
Any further discussion? Okay. And is Mr. Balmer here tonight? Mr. Balmer, we can come up as the petitioner and we'll let you have some time.
As far as that side looking ratty,
I'm sorry. But
I had just pulled a fence that had been right there in front, and it catches the wind, it catches all the junk that gets thrown out of the cars. I've moved that fence back. I've gone in there. I've cleaned it up. That's the original plants that the gentleman, Mr. Stratford, had planted himself, and I planned on keeping that as part of the front display. And putting as a berm, I was going to put some natural rock out there in front of it and just sharpen it up a little bit. The house, like you that's indicative of my nature. I'm not going to go out there and make a junkyard out of it. I've been in the automobile industry for 33 years. I've lived in Ogden for 49. And, I love the place. I respect the place. That's where my property is, and I'd just like to be able to do what I do. I need a little extra help. I did a lot of wholesale. Not so much internet sales, but wholesale. And I always kept everything in back. I kept it, I followed the rules that were set for me. But now, the way the economy is, I need to branch out a little bit and make a little extra money. Plain and simple. I have a coin business. It's not gold. It's numismatic. I rare coins. And the traffic that I get there is minimal. The cars there, I've got industrial tool right next to me in the places like a Walmart. There's cars in and out of it continually. And the people that come and look at a car, they've got plenty of room to get in back of. And they said that it's a display area, 2,500 square feet is a display area for about 7 cars. I only plan on having 4 out there in front. I've got it set up how I want it. I'm just waiting for the okay so I can go in and get it done. And any questions at all?
The home is pretty nice when I looked at it, but are you the only employee, or are there others there?
Actually, within the last 2 weeks, I have somebody that's come in part-time, and they're giving me a hand because it's actually picking up a little bit. And when I parked some cars out there just to see. They have not been for sale, but I parked them out there just to see what kind of attraction they draw, and people just, they've been pulling right in and coming up and asking me, and unfortunately I've been telling them that they're not for sale. So.
Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Balmer.
Thank you.
And now we can accept public input on this amendment. Please come up to the podium if you wish and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Seeing no activity, I guess I'd just like to say to Mr. Montgomery and the planning staff and the planning commission, this seems like a reasonable solution. So if there's no further discussion, I would make a motion to approve this.
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gochner and a second from Councilmember Wicks to approve Ordinance 2012-24. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
No.
Councilmember Stevens.
No.
Councilmember Van Hoosier.
No.
Councilmember Wicks.
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair.
Aye.
Chair Garner.
Aye.
I'd like to explain my vote, and it's just the fact that I always worry that we get one specific person coming in to change a zoning for a whole street. And I'd like to look at the Planning Commission and make sure that they've done their due diligence, which they certainly have. But it has passed, and that's probably good for Mr. Bonner.
I also need to explain, I'm sure Mr. Bonner will do an outstanding job. My question I have is, what will this do to impact the N2 area in that area? And that's my concern, is try to see what's going to happen down the road future-wise. I hope that you have a great success in your business and you can do what you want there. But I hope other businesses that come along the way will have the same attitude and care that he would have.
I would just felt that homogenizing zones like that's probably generally not a good idea, and that keeping zones for what the zone is made for was really the more appropriate approach. I did weigh that a lot, and it was about 51-49 in my view because of the proposal. Doesn't seem like it's too destructive to the zone that it is meant to be, and so I wish you all the best. I hope it goes well for you.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay, next is public comments. This is an opportunity to address the council regarding your concerns or ideas. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. In this form of government, all city personnel are the responsibility of the administration, not of the council. Please discuss any concerns you may have regarding staff with the mayor, chief administrative officer, or department directors.
Good evening. Dan Schroeder, 1444 Binford Street. I sent you all an email this afternoon with some carefully written comments about utility rates. You'll be glad to hear I'm not going to try to read you all those comments in 3 minutes. The email also has a couple of spreadsheets attached, which you can use to design your own water and sewer rate proposals and immediately see the implications, so have fun with that. Right now, I just want to make the point that the consultant's report on water and sewer rates is full of errors and inconsistencies. By its own calculation, the report's recommended water rate proposal would generate $629,000 more revenue than needed every year. Furthermore, those calculations are based on faulty data and the wrong rate formula. My best guess is that this means the revenue would be more than needed by another $700,000 or so. The report says that the goal is to split water revenues 50-50 between residential and commercial users, but if you do the math, it comes out 60% residential and 40% commercial. You, the council, directed the consultants to put 37.5% of water revenue into the base rates and the rest into the per gallon charges. But they actually put 41.5% into the base rates. The sewer rate section also uses a different rate formula than the one in your draft ordinance. The difference is more than $200,000 in revenue every year. If you look at the big spreadsheets that make the long-range financial projections, those are full of errors. The consultants forgot to apply inflation to most of the minor revenue items. They used the wrong inflation rate for most of the operating expenses. The list goes on, and if I had more time, I could give you half a dozen more examples. Some of them are inconsequential nitpicks, though if I were Laura Lewis, I would still find them pretty embarrassing. Other inconsistencies are big enough that the council will be negligent if you try to ignore them. Remember what happened with the rate structure that you passed in 2007. My last point is that it didn't have to be this way. Everyone makes mistakes. The way we correct our mistakes in my discipline is to show our work to our harshest critics and invite them to tear it down. During this rate study process, I've been available as a critic at all times to check the data, check the calculations, and raise red flags when I see something suspicious. Unfortunately, I haven't always seen the data in time to provide timely feedback, and unfortunately, as of the middle of March, the mayor's office has prohibited the consultants and all administrative staff from communicating with me directly on this subject. I can send them emails, but they're not allowed to respond, and we're not allowed to have an actual conversation without Mr. Johnson present. He generously did set up one meeting with me in the finance department, but in the last few weeks, he hasn't even had time to acknowledge any of my emails. It would also help a great deal, I think, if you, the council, and I could have an actual conversation. I would welcome a real dialogue where I could answer your questions in a public setting. Let's break this communication logjam and get these issues resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeder. Any further public comments? Okay, comments from administration.
I have nothing at this time. Thank you.
Comments from council staff. Council members.
I have a couple of things that I thought were very exciting over the weekend, one of which was the Ogden Migratory Bird program that we had out of the MTC on Saturday. It was well attended. Lots of little kids with birds, and they had the eagle from the Nature Center and Chitters, the owl, and there was just a lot of participation, a lot of excitement around the program that Ogden is now the first city to have this designation as an Ogden Migratory Bird program. The other thing I noticed was, I'm sure most of you, if you get the Standard Examiner, did you all see this one about kids? If anybody, I mean, I'm really doing this for the public because I think it's really worth looking at for activities for your kids for the summer. It's produced by United Way and lots of other agencies in Ogden that are providing programs for kids for the summer to kind of keep them busy. One of the sad things, I think, well, of course, the bike race was wonderful, too, if you were downtown, but the sad thing about the child in the Weber River, but I really want to commend Ogden City employees. That includes fire, police, everybody that has been down there working with the family and trying to make things better in a life of a family that's experienced a terrible tragedy.
Further comments from council members?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Heyer and a second from Councilmember Stevens to adjourn the special city council meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This is a reminder that we have a city council work session following this meeting. The purpose of the work session is to have council mayor discussion and discuss council business. Thank you.